Do you have any interesting leadership experiences as a young or a junior Marine officer?
Yeah, much like the rest of us, you kind of, when you first come into the Marine Corps, you buy the brochure, right? Every Marine officer is this square jawed, barrel chested, American hero who always, thinks clearly and like, makes the best decision, from a tactical, moral, and, you know, the best point of view
Yeah,
possible. And when you get in the Marine Corps, you realize that these are great people, right? You have even the majority of your leaders are really good people. They're trying to do their best, but they screw things up. And sometimes you have leaders who are human. They are tired. Sometimes it's hard to believe, but it's true. They are venal. They make decisions based on their own personal agenda. You see leaders make decisions based on like how it will make them look to their hire and things like that. I mean,
sure.
and you've maybe read stories or you kind of know that intuitive, but then you see it and you're a part of it, and it's kind of shocking. You see
Yes.
bad leaders, you see some good ones, and you kind of like, wait a minute, like, but I thought we were in the Marine Corps and like everybody's a good leader, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, not everyone's a good leader. It's a mixed bag like everywhere else. And only this, the problem is now you're in a position where the stakes are much higher, right? For bad leadership. So yeah, I mean, it was. I guess my first tour was very, and we had a good CO. We had a good battalion CO, a guy named John Mayer. I worked for a good. I was the Fort Air Controller for Alpha Company. A guy named Chris Griffiths, who later became a battalion commander for First Battalion, Fifth Marines, and I got along great with him. Like, just I was around some really great guys and great people, but you also saw instances of not such great leadership, and it really kind of like you're like, wait a minute,
Right.
like
So I feel like those
it was kind
experiences
of
are
shocking.
surreal where you're,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're like, is
yeah,
this really happening?
yeah.
And that's part of the growing up.
Yes, where it's surreal. And I'm like, similarly where you're kind of like, is this guy serious right now?
Is this
Does he
serious
know
right
we're
now?
all looking at him
Right.
and that we've lost every shred of confidence in him to be from my
Right.
experience, because I've
Yeah.
had that where I'm
There
like,
there are
I
those.
can't trust this guy for
Yeah.
anything.
Well,
What he just did,
or you kind of see peeks behind the curtain. You're like, wait a minute, like the motivations to make this decision or make this, in some cases, a tactical decision that would
yeah,
have consequence. You're like, oh, it really isn't based on the best tactical course of action or like what's
right,
objectively this term measurable set of criteria. It's based on, in some cases, like rivalries or like, hey, I want to look better than this other guy, and
yeah,
you're like, is this? And the thing is
yeah,
like, you're like, of course it's going to happen, right? These are humans, like
yes,
these are not robots. It's going to happen. But when you're in it and you see it for the first time, it is kind of shocking.
yeah. I've equated to when I've chatted with some people about, and even here now in Bali, and civilians sometimes are not, thinking from a Marine centric point of view, or like, hey, what do you do? How do you think? I contingency plan first for everything, Um, and then, from what you're saying, it's like, I made this analogy the other day to for, acquaintance where I was like, hey, like Marines are like, there's the pillbox with a bunch of machine guns. All right, we're gonna charge directly
Yeah,
at it in open terrain, and we're gonna
yeah.
destroy it. And I'm kind of like, huh? Really? No cover. We're gonna charge directly at it with nothing. And then I'm like, because I is as the
Is there another way here,
contrarian
Bob?
Marine,
Yeah.
where it's like, hey, could we potentially flank it and then get it from the either side? And like
Well,
that's where where
I tell you, like I've told you this. I think definitely in that, like at one point in that tour, first tour in Iraq, that's where it came on. The light came on for me because I'd been told this, and it hadn't really resonated. But I had been told this earlier, and by a very distinguished Marine from Vietnam, and he had
yeah,
said, he's like, Justin, don't ever forget because we do. We come in and we love the Marine Corps. It's we want to be there. It's again, like it's like it's going to be hard and it's going to be tough, and like we want to be part of that. But this gentleman he had taken me aside, and this is before 9/11, before I deployed to combat, and he was like, "Listen, you have to understand the Marine Corps is an organization that many times in its history has sent not just thousands, but tens of thousands of young men to their certain death.
Yes.
You are always and forever, and never forget this, you are just a number. And the minute you forget that, the minute you forget that this institution will, without hesitation, without blinking, without even like losing an ounce of sleep, send you to your certain death to accomplish a mission, like then you're in trouble. You're in
Yes.
trouble. And if you think about it, it has to be that way, right? For the Marine Corps to do its job, it has to have a
Yes.
certain level of callousness, a certain level. And I saw, and you did too, one of the things you would see Marines really start to struggle with is like this institutional callousness towards them. Like, hey, like the Marine Corps like kind of really doesn't really care about me. And you're like, it can't. It never
Right.
will. Because the second it does, it won't be the Marine Corps anymore.